Hi, fellow Catalyst. It's Tracey Lovejoy here. I had the great pleasure of getting to speak to a group of financial advisors, wealth managers this month. It is May 2018, and I wanted to report and share what I put together for the group as it may be of value to you. The title of the presentation was Unleashing the Best Practices of Change Agents. As we all know, change is difficult. Not changing, though, is fatal, and I'm preaching to the choir talking to you. You already know this religion. So what I'm going to be sharing is a how, not a what. I'm going to be talking about how catalysts and change agents manifest their goals seemingly easily. So I'm not going to be talking about which goals you should have or adding them to your list. Instead, it's how do we take that knowledge that's distilled from studying catalysts and look at the best practices they put in place to help us figure out how to manifest again and again. I want to start with a story of a change agent. So this is about a man, and he founded a company, and he ended up leaving the company on pretty bad terms. It didn't end up going well. So he started a second company. And when he started the second company, he knew he wanted to do it differently. And so he originally came up with an idea because of a chance meeting. He was talking to someone at an event that he was at, and this person was explaining to him how in the classroom in universities, professors didn't have machines that were powerful enough to do some of the processing they wanted to teach, some of the things that they wanted to do with students, that they needed more powerful machines, more powerful software so that they could really, really leverage technology in the classroom. So in his second company, he went around and he flew around the company, listening to folks in universities and schools to really get the detail on what this meant, on how he can meet these needs. So put together a plan. In 4 years after building that plan and having that crystal clear vision, they shipped the first piece of integrated hardware software specifically to support learning in higher ed. Once they shipped those machines, they looked at what happened in the market. They got feedback from folks about the product. And within a few years, they made a pretty dramatic shift again. Based on the feedback from the marketplace, they realized this may not be the way to go. So rather than doing integrated hardware and software, his company switched to be doing software only. And the software that they started producing was very, very flexible and allowed developers to develop more agilely on the software. That shift led to something happening 12 years after the founding of that second company. It was acquired. It was acquired for $429 million in cash. And 7 months after the acquisition, he was reinstated as CEO of the company he founded initially, that he'd left on bad terms because that was the company that bought the second company. So I'm sure by now, as a catalyst, you've guessed who I'm talking about. Talking about Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs is by far one of the most influential people of my time, my generation, and one of the quintessential change agents, catalysts that has ever existed. But what does it mean for someone like Steve Jobs to manifest and make all of those things come true, right? To most of us, we can look around and we can feel like, oh my gosh, that was just magic. Because even if we are catalysts and we're very catalytic and we're able to have lots of ideas and move toward action, we don't always have the knowledge of what it is that allows us to be successful in that manifestation. So that's what we're going to focus on, is really bringing forward, breaking down even this story to talk about what it is that allows catalysts to be really successful. So I've broken down from the research and I've pulled out 3 best practices. This is from talking to CEOs, entrepreneurs, designers, consultants, researchers, doctors, lawyers all over the globe, to understand how they work, how they bring things forward, and then distill that down and bring 3 forward. So the first best practice is absolute clarity of vision. Change agents can see exactly where they are going. So we see this in the story with Steve. When he founded Next, that second company, he had absolute clarity of vision that he wanted to serve higher education. In fact, he flew everywhere all over to really make sure that he got clearer and clearer and clearer to know where he was going. And he always had clarity of vision, whether it was the founding of Next, the shifting to software only, or as he revolutionized the music industry with the iPod. He always saw where he was going in complete detail to move that forward. In the group where I was giving this talk with financial advisors, I pulled forward a quote. And the quote from one of the people in the audience is that I can serve my client, the people that I want to help save with their money, to help with their business. I serve them if I really imagine them in deep detail and I know exactly the outcomes that I want to move to with them. The clearer I know the outcomes, the more successful I am. And that's a classic statement from a change agent, from a catalyst. There's a few questions to consider in this area to really help us as we move toward that clarity of vision. Number one, do you know what success looks like in whatever it is you're building right now, what you're manifesting right now in 3 to 5 years? Do you know it just backwards, forwards, inside out, what it feels like, tastes like, smells like? Number two, do you actually know what you need to achieve by the end of this year to get you there? Have you broken out those steps so that you have clarity on moving toward that particular vision? And third, if you're sitting in an organization or you run a business, do those on your team, do they know the vision and the goals that they're supposed to be helping you move toward? And are you sure that you've communicated it enough so that they know it in detail? The second main best practice that we can take from change agents is that they actually schedule in time to do those priorities, to do those goals that move them toward their vision. In fact, they will move other things on their calendar to ensure that there is time for those things. So most of us, when we're doing research, we don't usually fly around the country to really get clarity. But Steve Jobs, right, powerful guy, even after he left Apple the first time, really cleared his calendar so he could go and do this research and get to know his ideal client and understand their needs and challenges in depth. If we don't do this, if you have a to-do list or you have kind of a set of things that you think you need to get done toward your main vision, but it doesn't show up in your calendar, if you don't actually have it there and have time blocked with the specifics attached to it, then you are doing the magical thinking, not the catalyst. The catalyst will, the effective catalyst will get this done, get it on their calendar. An example of this manifesting with, again, using financial analyst as the group that I was speaking to, was there was someone in the audience that had blocked their calendar so that Mondays and Fridays they were in the office with existing clients, running the team meetings, working with the staff. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they had blocked completely for business development, which was this person's highest value to the organization that she ran. So it was about ensuring that she was meeting with new potential clients, talking to influencers, talking to folks that she had built a professional network with, thinking about speaking engagements, writing, and gaining thought leadership. She had that scheduled in detail in her calendar. Some things to consider about scheduling your priorities. Number one, are your highest priorities reflected in your calendar this month? Remember, if we don't have it actually written in the place that shows us how we're dividing our time, magical thinking. Number two, is the majority of your time next week actually dedicated to your highest priorities? Have you really done that check? And number three, are those priorities really blocked on your calendar, not just time blocked toward vision, but actually broken out in detail on the specific things you want to get done? Going back to clarity of vision, that you know the tasks that are going to take you there. So let's turn to the third best practice. The third best practice for change agents is really internalizing this scientist mentality of test and learn. That each time a change agent, a catalyst takes a step, they look at what they learned from that, and then they're going to reroute depending on that learning, which may even mean changing the vision. So as we go back to Steve Jobs, Steve had launched Next. He had gotten a computer into the marketplace in 4 years, and then they learned that the cost for that was too high to actually make it a viable business. And so they, continued their look and who was picking up, and that's when they made the turn to be really thinking about enterprise. And that was the early days of what the iTunes platform ended up being built on, which was the reason that Apple ended up buying them back. So the thing to be aware of with test and learn is that we expect as we test and learn that our vision may shift, or at minimum the priorities and goals that we have set. And this happens for you, I'm sure, as a catalyst without even thinking about it. And so the reason we need to bring this to consciousness is sometimes when something feels like it was a huge failure, or it didn't go great, we want to remind ourselves in those moments, nope, this is a normal moment. This is what's going to happen. This is what they mean by fail fast and move forward. To consider in this area in terms of test and learn, how often do you reflect on your learnings from clients you're working with, influencers, other things that you've been implementing? How often do you actually take the time to reflect and figure out what we have seen transpire because of the step that we've taken? How often do you revisit your vision? Do you have your vision in a public place? And does it have handwriting all over it? Are you updating it with regularity, maybe annually, maybe every couple months? And then are you talking about these learnings and any updates to your vision with the team that's supporting you? So review 3 key best practices pulled out from research with catalysts and change agents around the globe. Number 1, an absolute clarity of vision. Number 2, priorities are scheduled. They are put in the calendar very, very clearly. Number 3, a scientific mind of test and learn that may go back and implement number 1. So these are great best practices, but I do have a particular challenge for you as we wrap up these slides to build our plan of action, which is before you go to bed tonight, to really go back and have crystal clear vision on whatever it is you're in the process of birthing and manifesting. And get as clear as you can. What's going to be different in life when I get there? What's it going to taste like, feel like, smell like? How will the people I interact with be different? How will my time be spent in different ways? Because the more clearly you can see yourself in the manifestation of that goal, the more likely you are to move toward it with power. So if Steve Jobs were here with us, was sitting here with me in my office, do you know what he would say? What he would tell us? He would say to you, these indeed are the 3 best practices of a change agent like me. May your manifestation be magic. Thanks for listening.